Well, thank you for the
hungry?
feast, brother. Yeah. I mean, even if I wasn't, now I am. Look at this.
Well, the pressure's on, man. I'm inviting an Argentinian man into my home for steak.
Let's see
I
how
know
you
it's
did.
a bold
It's
move.
bold
so
move, my brother.
I hope you
But
approve.
I'm very excited about this. I'm gonna start with this bone marrow action here
Go for it.
because this looks. Ooh, man. And the salt. Now, you know, we have in Argentina we call the bone marrow, not really the bone marrow itself, but when you get a T-bone, you know that it has a little corner of bone marrow in it? We call that caracú. So this is like
Pero
caracú.
estos tuétanos también, ¿no?
Sí, pero es como que...
Caracú.
Caracú.
Nice. Oh my God, look at a piece.
Mira lo que es esto. Oh.
So for those of y'all that don't know, my good friend here, Donato Hilding, is the founder and owner of the Miami Ice Club, which is where we met. Having lunch today to catch up as friends, but also to talk about a hot, somewhat debated topic of...
Is Jake single? And I'm here to tell you, he is. Are you? Good deal.
Cat's out of the bag. Topic is if extreme cold exposure hinders muscle growth immediately following strength training or hypertrophic training. Some people say yes, some people say no. I figure what better than to bring the master, one of the few certified Wim Hof method instructors in the US, one of the only in the state of Florida, and certainly the only in Miami, hence him being the man at the Miami Ice Club. If you're looking for knowledge and authority, you might as well bring in an authority.
Whoa.
And it's a 2-for-1 because he's
I'm just here for the steak. I'm just here for the food. This is delicious, brother. What are we eating?
This is a pasture-raised ribeye, bone-in. It was a big one. And yeah, seared, cooked medium rare, drizzled with the jus from the finish, cooked in tallow before that, and then topped off with the good old Maldon salt, you know?
Oh,
Love you guys.
this is so good. Yeah, I think he had a new tattoo with the mouth on salt body. Yeah, I saw it on your thigh the other day.
I do, that is correct.
So let's do something. Let's do something. Because you asked me this over a text message and I was like, nah, let's just sit down and talk about it. Because I feel like one of the issues that we're having now is that people are not sitting down to have these conversations and try to understand the question that we're asking or try to come up with the answer ourselves based on two things. Number one, experience, all the time that we've been dedicated to this practice. And then also not just reading it on Instagram and then believing that that's what that is.
Right.
Which is one of the reasons why I connected so well with you, because you're a man that clearly lives the life that...
I'm not a fan of theory. I like practice,
Yeah.
right? Like theorists are great, but practitioners, that's the understanding, you know?
To me, an expert is not a theorist and not just a practitioner. It's someone that understands the theory very well and uses the practice to challenge that theory and to...
Test hypothesis constantly.
Exactly. Well, that's science, right?
Yep.
So, you know, right now, like if Uberman says something or if Joe Rogan says something, then that's it. And I'm like, all right.
That's pretty accurate. I love them both. But that's pretty accurate, yeah.
Nothing against them.
Those are hard blessings.
And by the way, this is Argentinian approved, my brother. This is amazing. This is good. Wow. You know, and I'll tell you what I like the most about this particular meat session. That you made this in your kitchen in a condo in South Beach. You didn't do it in a grill. You didn't light a fire outside or anything like that, which...
That's on my old
cast iron
burned out.
skillet.
That thing was bright orange when I first got
It
it.
looks, yeah, just the handle.
Got some
is
miles
bright.
on it, dude. Yeah.
You know, simple food, simple tools, simple lifestyle. You know,
That's what
I don't need science to prove that this is that this is good. It feels good, tastes good, looks good. You know, so
I'm glad you like it.
thank you, brother. We should do one of these every week.
I'm not against
Here's
it.
what I'm thinking.
I do eat a good bit of steak, so it wouldn't be inconvenient for me.
It'll be fun. You do need someone to keep you company. So What I want to make sure that we do is that, first of all, we understand hypertrophy and strength training for hypertrophy, which you can tell that I do a lot of. I'm like a whole 152 pounds of pure savage. More than anything, cerebral hypertrophy, and
ultimate muscle.
And then we understand hypertrophy and hypertrophic training, or training for muscle hypertrophy, and then that we understand what the cold exposure does,
Right.
and also what the cold exposure does, and also what breath work does. I know that that's really not the conversation, but to me they go together because I come from the Wim Hof school of cold exposure, breath work, and mindset training. So let's understand all of those and see what conclusions we can come up to without having to go on Instagram and find validation for it. Right?
That's why we're here today.
So hopefully we get an understanding of how the theory works and we all figure it out together. So I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm going to give you the theory and the experience that I have from my training. So before we get started, like, what's the training? You know, I've already put, I think last month, we ran the numbers again, and I think I've already supervised more than 7,000 ice baths since I started teaching people. 7,000 ice baths. I have no idea how many I've done. A lot of my students have done a lot more than I have, because, you know, they show up to my class 3 times a week and crack them.
Me being one of those
These
people.
guys will be one of them. So in 7,000 plus ice bath experiences that I've done, I've never gotten anyone get hurt. I've gotten a few having bad experience. But, you know, when you do anything 7,000 times, it's going to be some bad ones, you know? I can do this 7,000 times. There's going to be a few that I'm going to be like, this is no bueno, but I don't know. You know, 3 out of 7,000, I'll take it.
I'm going to be like, are you sure?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, so we'll have to meet 7,000 more times. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because I'm not sitting at a lab running numbers. I'm not sitting in my apartment making podcasts. I'm there in front of 3 ice baths and cranking people through them. I have a very specific method. This is so good. I'm even doing a disservice by talking about it. But we have a method where we keep people 2 to 3 minutes, right? I haven't found any science proving that more than 3 minutes has beneficial results in terms of wellness or overall perception of wellness, which is the main measure or key performance indicator that the Wim Hof method has been measured against.
It's a big word, guys. Key performance indicator, also called KPI.
What are we measuring, right? And a lot of the science around the Wim Hof method is perception of overall wellness, which is tremendously subjective, by the way, because it's perception of wellness.
Of course.
But look, you're like, hey, I don't feel good. I feel depressed. I feel anxious. I feel sad. I feel like I can't trust my brain. Cool. Now you go in, you do the Wim Hof method, and then you feel better. You feel like you're more clear. You feel like, of course, these are feelings.
Right.
These are not, you know, things that you're measuring blood or whatever. But at the end of the day, you don't live your life by your blood results. You live your life by feeling, right? You probably shouldn't trust them and let them drive your life, but they're definitely.
They're good for guidance, for reference.
Yeah.
But they're not defining.
No, they're not who you are.
Right.
They're just another thing that your brain does, right? So.
And to what standard are they set against?
Right.
You know what I mean?
So a lot of the numbers that are around the Wim Hof method are those, especially in the research that we did a few years ago, where we try to figure out what creates the effect. Is it the breath work? Is it the cold exposure? Is it the mindset training? Is it a combination of the 3? Is it a combination of these 2? Is it a combination of these 2? Is it a combination of these 2? So they did all the groups and they figured out some interesting things. So that's really cool. And this is why I've always felt that the breath work is the most powerful part of the Wim Hof method. It's not why we're famous. It's because of the cold exposure and the ice baths, right? And the alpine climbs and all that stuff. But to me, it's the breath work, right?
If anything, that would make sense to me, because between that and the mindset, that's the only non-external one. I mean, the ice bath, cold exposure, mountain climbs, it's still external. Right. It requires something else as opposed to You tell someone, do this work, do this breath work, think this way, apply this mindset. You need nothing. Just like we're talking about, no other tools, no other fires, no other intricacies. Same thing. The cold exposure is part of it, but I believe you when you said it's much more the breath work.
To me, well, and that's what the study showed, that the breath work produces the most of the results come from the breath work.
Wow.
So, yeah, they did a group that did breath work only. They did a group that did ice baths only, right? And the breath work group had just breath alone.
Wow.
I think it was responsible for like 90-something% of the results was just from the breath work once they tabulated all the numbers. Now, when you start doing blood work to those people, and this goes back to the Radboud University study, the endotoxin study that Wim is famous for. Shut him up with the endotoxin, with E. coli, so that he could see what immune response he would get. He got just a mild headache instead of all the...
This is about him doing the autonomic nervous system manipulation against it to combat it?
Right. And then, but all he did was breath work. It's not like he was doing something crazy, right? And then he brought test studies that were like university students that trained with him for 4 days and then with him for 3, at home for 3 days.
The reason wasn't the reason like, well, you're an N of 1, and he's like, I can teach anybody to do this within a minimal amount of time.
In a week, yeah.
4 people, and I'll do it, and he did that.
They showed that he could control his immune system, right? Which is a broad way of saying the breath work releases a high amount of norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is tremendously anti-inflammatory. I'm mentioning all of this because it's coming up for hypertrophy, right?
Of course.
So norepinephrine is a tremendously anti-inflammatory substance, a neurotransmitter, a hormone. And cortisol, you also with the breath work release a lot of cortisol, which a lot of people are like, cortisol is the stress hormone. It's not the stress hormone, it's the pay attention hormone. So you pay attention, that's why nowadays we have so much chronic cortisol because we're constantly paying attention to the dings and to the rings and to the signs and to the music and to the podcast and to the Spotify. Always paying attention to something and getting stimulated to pay attention.
Imagine what the cortisol levels are like in Manhattan.
That's out of control. The thing is that norepinephrine, because it's a higher priority neurotransmitter or hormone, because if cortisol is the pay attention hormone, right? Like there's a sound inside of that bush, you're like, what is that? That inclination to want to do what is that, and you're focused to go to the bush to see if there's a lion or a bunny in there, right? That's cortisol. It's what the brain asks the body to secrete so that all the attention and all the energy gets reserved to pain focus.
So
Alert. Boom. Now, then if this bunny comes out of the thing and it's just a bunny, then that's it. But if it comes out of the bush and you're starting to see a big creature, then you release norepinephrine. That'll get ready to fuck some shit up hormone or run away. It's not the fight or flight hormone, so norepinephrine is adrenaline. And then if this thing it's a real threat and you're gonna have to fight it or run away from it, then you release epinephrine. And that's also adrenaline, and that's fight or flight. So you have a nervous system change, you go into your sympathetic nervous system, it gets very active, very stimulated, and you get to fight. Now, all of that doesn't matter. What matters is that the norepinephrine and the epinephrine are, you have cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine. These are very different hormones in terms of priority for your system. Because one is to pay attention, the other one's to survive. Right? So your cells are going to always prioritize norepinephrine over cortisol. So when you start releasing norepinephrine, your body pays attention to that, and then the cortisol is no longer used. And anything that your body doesn't use, what does it do? It discards it. And this is how you flush out cortisol. The problem nowadays and why people are calling cortisol the stress hormone is because they're paying attention and paying attention and paying attention, but when was the last time you saw a fist fight on the street? Or anything.
Right.
They just scare you. Nothing. So this is why a lot of people, when they want de-stress, they go to these high-intensity vacations. Because these high-intensity vacations release adrenaline. And you come back and you're like, I don't feel stressed at all.
Right.
How do you not feel stressed at all? You just jumped off a plane. That's super stressful. But in reality, what it did is it cleared out. It gave your body a break from using the cortisol because it's using norepinephrine. And then during that time, also think of your adrenaline's up, right? Your norepinephrine are up. Your metabolism goes up. So now you're everything that you're processing
cortisol's like
just gone.
way down there.
Right? Now, what they discovered is that when you do the breath work, you don't release epinephrine, you release norepinephrine, which allows the body to ignore cortisol, and then hopefully your healthy body clears it out. And the effects of that norepinephrine in your bloodstream stay around for about 24. Breath work only. Now, when you pair breath work with cold exposures, those effects stay for 6 days. So you're giving your body a 6-day break so that it can clear out these pay attention hormones, which create chronic stress because you're always paying attention. That's what makes you stressed.
So that's the rattle.
Yeah, that's why you can't fall asleep, right? And look, you got the fight or flight, which is one of the functions of the sympathetic nervous system. And then you have the parasympathetic nervous system with one of its functions being rest, digest, and reproduce. So if you're always paying attention, if you're always stressed, if you're always in this sympathetic nervous system, I wouldn't be surprised if you have struggles resting, falling asleep, because you're always thinking and you can't stop thinking, because you train your brain to think all the time, and you chemically are set up for paying attention all the time because of the excess of cortisol. You can't digest, so you're constipated or you always have stomach issues, right? And then you can't reproduce. You're struggling to have babies, which an abnormal amount of people nowadays are struggling to have babies, right?
Yeah.
But you go to the beach, you go to like Dominican Republic on the beach, one of those guys, they touch you and you're pregnant.
There's fertile water.
They're chilling. Anyway, so I think that understanding hormonal function is important for any conversation that has anything to do with trying to create physical display of results from your training, right? What I'm trying to say here is that the hormonal of the breath work is very important. And I'm going to bring it into the hypertrophy conversation even before we talk about ice baths. Now, the ice bath release a similar set of hormones. Why? You're outside, it's 90 degrees, right? Your brain's like, okay, we're normal. We're in homeostatic temperature. It's hot outside, so maybe you're sweating a little, whatever, but your body is doing its thing to control its temperature. All of a sudden, you're in an ice bath. Your brain doesn't understand you're in an ice bath. Right? Our brains haven't evolved to distinct
controlled environment versus...
Yeah, I mean, we get it. I mean, we know that's an ice bath. Right. But, bro, we also know I'm watching a horror movie, but I'm still scared. Why am I scared that I'm going to die if I'm watching a horror movie? I know I'm watching a horror movie. Why am I screaming? Why am I scared? Why am I nervous if I know I'm watching a movie? Your higher consciousness, your neocortex, your human brain, your prefrontal lobes know you're watching a movie. But the more basic part of your brain, your mammalian brain and even your reptilian brain, right? So your limbic system is like
sending signals.
They're just sending. They're like what? So your limbic system can hijack your neocortex like 10 times a second. So if your neocortex is not paying attention for just a second, for a tenth of a second, your limbic system can take over. So if I'm watching a horror movie, I'm watching a horror movie. Oh, what is that? Oh my God, he's like, and now my limbic system freaking out as if I'm gonna die, and I'm just sitting with a thing of popcorn or,
in a controlled environment.
Right? So, but you're still scared. So when you get in an ice bath, your brain doesn't know you're getting in an ice bath. Your brain is like, we were warm, now we're cold as fuck. What happened? What changed? What'd you do? What happened?
/ get us out of here.
Just fix it. Your brain doesn't even want to know what happened. It's just like, fix it. Fix it. Right? And if you've been in an ice bath before and you're trying to get started, the first ice bath you get in, you're like, fix it. You're like, what the fuck?
Make this stop.
And you're like, why is my brain freaking out?
Right.
I'm in a bucket of ice.
I know where I am. This is a controlled environment. I didn't fall through the ice in the water.
No.
I'm not freaking out.
But your brain is doing its job. Your brain is doing its job, and you're just being weird. And your brain hasn't caught up to this idea that we do weird shit. Fine. So you go in the ice, and instantly you're gonna go into fight or flight. Because the differential of temperature that you're facing would be, imagine if you're just standing here, it's 90 degrees, right? So you go into one of the ice baths at the ice club, they're at 30 degrees, right?
It's a significant change.
So it's a 60-degree temperature change. What would happen if you were sitting here at 90 degrees and all of a sudden it was 150 degrees?
It'd be pretty serious.
You'd be like, what the, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, okay, so we're going in the negative, right? You're dumping your temperature that much, your brain's gonna want you to get out. And it's gonna put you in a fight or flight state. So it's gonna release
epinephrine coming.
That's gonna be norepinephrine and epinephrine hitting hard quick. So with the ice bath, you don't get so much of the cortisol, because it's not like with the breath work, you're progressively introducing hormetic stress, right? That controlled hormetic stress is that controlled stress that it's like hypertrophy training is hormetic stress if you do it right.
Right.
It's enough to create a beneficial effect, but not enough to create permanent damage.
Too much is dangerous.
Right. So when you do breath work, you're turning up the intensity little by little. So your brain notices little by little there's something going on. So you get cortisol. Hey, pay attention. What's happening? Something's weird. Right? And you're like, oh, go, this is intense. Okay, we need to release some norepinephrine, get ready, but you never get past that.
Got it.
This is Wim Hof, standard Wim Hof breathing. There's other techniques that do other things. That's not what we're covering here. So, but the ice bath, it's direct jump into fight or flight. Norepinephrine and epinephrine. You're skipping the cortisol, right?
Because you're surprised. You don't have the...
You don't have time to pay attention. I mean, it doesn't matter. Your brain, and you can tell that your brain is releasing norepinephrine and epinephrine. You can tell epinephrine because you want to fight or you want to run away. So there's people that are like, no, I'm gonna get out. And they start standing up. They're not choosing to stand up out of the ice bath. Their body is doing it because it's responding to the neurotransmitter, right? Or there's people that just want to fucking fight it. This happens a lot with bigger dudes that are used to fighting because they've trained their body to fight that hormone, right? The trigger of that hormone is fight. So a lot of my MMA fighters, a lot of my ex-military, a lot of my first responders, they're like trying to beat up the ice. And I'm like, what are you doing?
You're not gonna win that one.
Nah, it's gonna get cold. But so you get the shot, the norepinephrine and the epinephrine are insanely anti-inflammatory. If you're paying attention, this should already be talking to hypertrophy, right?
Yeah.
So, all right.
Think about hypertrophy and muscle volumization.
Yeah. So, would you do hypertrophic training and then pop 2,000 milligrams of Advil? I mean, if Advil wasn't going to do something horrible with you, but what I'm saying is that you're
quite the opposite effect.
We're going for something there, right? So, and there's hypertrophy training for aesthetics, and then there's hypertrophy training for strength, and then there's actual strength training. Like the strong man, they're not the most aesthetically.
Yeah,
no, I'm not talking about appealing. I'm saying that there's bodybuilders with bigger muscles than strongman, but they're not strong.
Of course.
Right? So we'll talk about that in a second too. But the idea is you get this release of, because by the way, ice is not anti-inflammatory. Ice has never been proven to be anti-inflammatory.
Now hearing this.
Right? It's like vitamin C doesn't fight flus. We've never proven that, right? However, the ice creates a particular reaction in your body that releases, and we're understanding this now. This is kind of a newer, like the last 15 years, right?
It's not pseudoscience, it's science. It's not pseudoscience.
Yeah,
it's science.
But it's new science.
Right.
I mean, we knew that getting in the cold was good for your muscles to not feel sore after a workout. So we said, okay, cold is anti-inflammatory, but cold is not anti-inflammatory. That's not been proven. What's been proven is that being put in that situation does two things. It releases the hormones and it vasoconstricts. That combination, I think, and this once again, I think, using my theory and my engineering brain, that vasoconstricting, it's like getting a gigantic massage. So all that buildup of lactic acid, all of that moves.
Right.
Also, then when you get out of the ice and your veins vasodilate, when you open your veins again, you're getting now oxygen and nutrient-rich blood into the damaged tissue. So is ice good for recovery? Yes, because of the norepinephrine release and because of the lactic acid, because of the vasoconstriction, which in theory should move lactic acid.
Right.
And then because of the subsequent vasodilation. Because if you're coming from a workout, not only you're very acidic, you have a lot of CO2 built up in your system, that's vasodilating.
Right. Yeah,
right?
I don't do everything.
Yeah, you got everything. And that's why your veins are popping out at the end of a workout. So you go in there, boom, they squeeze. If you can do it. Because there's a lot of people, here's another one. Out of those 7,000 ice baths that I did, most of the people that have had to get out of the ice bath were people that were coming from running a marathon, doing a Spartan, doing one of those things.
Wow.
Right, because they had so much lactic acid built up that they couldn't tolerate the pain of the vasoconstriction.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
And I had to pull them out.
Wow. Because it was too, that trend.
It's too painful, and now they're disabled from the pain.
Wow.
They're freezing, and they're not freezing as in cold bone marrow that is inside of the bone, gold.
I almost lost it, yeah. That is literally gold.
Yeah.
That's wild, but it makes sense.
Right? So, all the veins contracted, and they were in such pain, and also they were so dehydrated.
Yep. And it's even more, right, on top of
Right?
it.
So dehydration is not just water, it's also lack of electrolytes. And these guys are coming straight from that to do breath work. Awesome choice. But now, that's a good
Awesome
choice.
choice for the breath work, but
For the breath work, the thing is that, the breath work also makes you a little bit euphoric. So you think it's a great idea to do an ice bath. And I don't think it's not a great idea. It's just that with
just
all...
buyer beware.
It's just good. Kind of like, okay, let's monitor it. I wish I knew that you came from a Spartan race, because I have to pull you out of the ice bath and you're 220 pounds, just trying to yank you out of a box, So, this is for my friend Nelson. So, those are things that we got to consider when we're looking at what are the effects of an ice bath.
Got it.
Right? So this is what an ice bath does. So now the question is, should I do an ice bath before or should I do an ice bath after training for muscle hypertrophy? What causes muscle hypertrophy? I'm going to ask this to you. You explain to me the science of that.
So muscle hypertrophy is when muscle fibers, or telomeres, are torn, expanded, and then contracted, expanded, contracted over and over and over to where they're stretched. So they look like this, like fibers. Mm-hmm. And basically what hypertrophy is doing is moving them, closing them, moving them, closing them. But eventually they get moved and closed so much that they're either no longer touching or barely touching. And it's essentially the limit of volumization your muscles can tolerate safely and healthily. And then holding that, right? So it's growth. That's how the muscles grow. So what he's talking about in regards to vasoconstriction and vasodilation, that would make sense to me where that would hinder doing that. Because if I just did all that work to do that, why would I want to get into something that's going to just make them seize back up, number one, as opposed to having something that's going to keep them open so that they can stay in that growth state. Mm-hmm. And continue to grow, possibly even on their own, continue to be pumping that blood that they need to be fed, as opposed to just shelling them back up again.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Does that make sense to you?
That makes sense to me. So we keep that vasodilated state. We keep the CO2 on. We keep the all these substances that are acidic in your body, so that you keep that CO2. So you keep that vasodilation happening. If you go into the ice, you're going to close it. And you're also going to release 24 hours of anti-inflammatories with an norepinephrine. So for 24, if you're looking to get inflammation, which by the way, if you're doing, so here's hypertrophy and what you're doing it for. That's the other thing. People are like, hypertrophy, you shouldn't do ice baths after. You're like, wait a second, what am I doing?
It can't be that binary.
No, but you know what? When you have 12 seconds to convince a person to watch your video, you're going to have to say something stupid like that.
Right.
So we're sitting there understanding now that the ice bath creates an anti-inflammatory reaction.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're really good at ice baths, you can get so much norepinephrine.
Just because you're used to
it? Because it's not scaring you, then why are you going to get norepinephrine?
Got it. Oh, that's
right? So sometimes when my students get too good, I like dunk their head in. That's why I'm always like 3 minutes.
Right.
Because one day I'm like 5 minutes and they lose their mind. And then back to 3 minutes,
To keep the spontaneity, to keep the hormone having
just keep that going. Or sometimes I'm like 1 minute. They're like, 1 minute? What do you mean 1 minute? Get out. And they're like, what? Get back in. And they're like, no. So you just got to make it weird so that their brain
so you're literally manipulating with the hormones by doing that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Right?
That's pretty cool.
So my responsibility as a trainer is to keep your body stimulated to continue to have those results. So we're kind of pushing different buttons.
Got it.
Now, hypertrophy, what do we want our muscles to do? Do we want them to swell up so that you go to a bodybuilding show and you look big? Do you want the hypertrophy to build strength, all right? Or and strength would be muscle fiber density, not necessarily size.
Exactly.
Right? So it's how many fibers do you have in the bicep that's going to make that, is going to have more mass.
Exactly.
But it's not going to have more size necessarily.
Exactly.
Because you can have, it's kind of like having a pound of feathers or a pound of lead. A pound of feathers is this big, but it's still a pound. Whereas a pound of lead is like that. So what are we trying to do?
I say that to people, explaining to them about weight loss or weight gain.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is better. Let's say you weigh, like you said, 152 pounds, and this is your arm. Mm-hmm. Inside the arm, the very center would be the bone, right? Around the bone is muscle, around the muscle is fat. So each one of those rings represents each one of those. We're not going to change the density of the bone, right? Yeah. From the time you reach puberty and finish adolescence and your growth spurts, your bones are going to be the same size until very late in your life. Maybe marginal difference throughout, but very small. Your muscle and your fat, however, is something you can dictate, mm-hmm. right, and change and manipulate. But often misconception about gaining muscle mass is size. It's not always the case, right? If this is the arm, and this is the skin around, and the muscle again is in the middle, and the fat is around it, mm-hmm. it's about changing that ratio first before the body is actually going to change in size. So typically with like female clients, when they say, I don't want to strength train, I don't want to get too big, I don't want to get bulky, and I'm like, first off, it takes a long time and a lot of eating. Again, a long time, a lot of eating to get big and bulky. Whereas if you just change the ratio, let's say this is our muscle and this is our fat, and let's say we have a 50-50 ratio of muscle to fat, so a 1-to-1 representation. If you increase that muscle ratio, it's going to decrease the fat around it.
Because of the metabolic rate that is needed to maintain that muscle.
Correct, but that doesn't change the size.
You're still, my arm is still
the same size. Your arm is the same size, right? Except it's just the underneath, the muscle density, like you're talking about, has now increased, and the fat is literally getting pushed into the skin. So like fat, like any energy, we've got plenty of fat right here. If I take some of this and start to rub my fingers on it, what does it do? It starts to go away. It starts to melt, right? Mm-hmm. So right now what I'm doing is exactly what happens when muscles grow inside the body. The fat doesn't just burn away because it's going somewhere. It's when the muscles are stretching and growing that they're literally pushing the fat against
that friction.
Layers of skin mm-hmm. and friction, and then all of a sudden, now my finger is, come on, focus, nice and greasy, because of the friction. It's the same thing inside the body. That's what muscle density is. That is what I say the true goal of hypertrophy is
to create muscle,
dense muscle.
Dense muscle. Okay, so if that's the case, right? Because if we want this size, like if I want to bulk up, so I go to the club with giant New Jersey biceps, or if I want to just look big for tomorrow's competition.
Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, but to go to the beach, we're going to hit some
you want to, whatever. You know, it's like you're going to see the ladies, so you want to pump it up. Whatever. Then you want to avoid any anti-inflammatory anything. However, if I'm going for strength training, which we just agreed that for this conversation, not for all conversations in the universe, means more muscle, higher muscle density, right? Muscle fiber density. So more fibers in the same space or in the same volume. Therefore, for me to be able to pack as many muscle fibers as I can in there, I need to make sure that the healing occurs properly. Which is this. We were talking about the muscle fibers stretching. The thing is that as you rest, your muscle fibers do return to not its fully original position, hopefully, but kind of. Yep. But on the way back, how they recover is very important. Because you start creating muscle adhesions and muscle fiber crossing like this. This is what makes you tight. That's why that's why you should stretch, right? So that even though you're doing this for the strength training, and then it goes here, and then as you cool down, you're still like, just to make sure that when you were doing this, you didn't go like that, and then just went home and drank a beer. No, you just finish lining them all up, so that as the healing happens, you have proper alignment in the muscle.
In the fibers.
In the fibers. Once again, this is all theory, right? So we're here, bam, bam. I love that this is theory, but here you have two muscular, lean muscle guys that strength train and stretch and do ice bath. and eat beef.
Feeling is
The
understandable.
feeling is understandable. But I'm hoping that Papa Uberman proves it, because till then it's just pseudoscience and fake news from us.
It sounds good though.
So now, if I want to create strength training, then here's what I know. The more often I can go and put hormetic stress on a recovered muscle fiber, then the faster I'll stimulate it and I'll grow it.
Right.
So therefore, ice baths are bad for muscle hypertrophy, but also ice baths are good for muscle hypertrophy, because if you want to create high density of muscle fibers, then the sooner you go back to the gym, the better.
Right.
So the question is, do you want hypertrophy now, or do you want hypertrophy long term? Do you want to keep that hypertrophy, or do you want to just bulk up and then deflate, like we've seen it a million times in bodybuilding?
Right.
So for me, once again, this is my opinion, I would do strength training and create that swelling and create that inflammation, create that vasoconstriction. Then allow my body to recover naturally a little bit, and then do an ice bath to help it vasoconstrict, to then when I come out, vasodilate and get the full benefit. What are the full benefits? Get the vasodilation again, get new nutrients and new oxygen with new blood into the muscle. That'll help it recover faster, which means I get to go to the gym and train again sooner.
That's pretty much my question was, that's what I agree. And that's essentially what I do. And I guess to give me more detail is like, how soon?
How soon?
And I think afterwards, meaning like, let's say we strength train in the morning, what would you say? It's hard to say, obviously, based on the intensity of the exercise, the person. The question is going to be, well, how long should I wait until afterwards? That's what the question is going to be. I know it.
The question
how long should I wait?
The question is, all right,
2 hours, 2 days.
My first answer is like, does it really matter? You're going to do an ice bath when it's convenient,
Mm-hmm.
not when I tell you. I've been a coach for I don't know how many years now, and it's so hard to get people to do what you tell them. So what's the point of me telling you?
Well, it's like
how long?
I finish the workout and I have a cold plunge there, or I'm
Fucking
right
do
to
it.
a place. I'm like, I'm usually gonna go right there. I'm like,
Do it.
I'm not gonna come back later. I don't have time. I have a schedule. I have work. I have things to do.
That question is only relevant for pro athletes that are looking for a very specific result, and you would have to tell me what that result is, and then I would have to do a bunch of testing on you to then tell you how long. So the answer is, I don't know. Do it and feel it and see how you feel the next day. And don't make a conclusion yet. Do it for a month, and then you'll know. And then next month, change it, and then figure it out. Of course, that's not what you want in social media. You want me to tell you 2 hours. I want you to do your workout and then wait 47 seconds, and then no.
You know what the truth is that, sure, I think there's marginal hindrance to doing it immediately following. However, I think there are far worse things, far more pressing things that people don't do on a regular basis.
Right.
That are far more detrimental.
Like what?
Like let's say like,
Hydrate.
it's gonna mess up my gains if I get in the ice bath right after. All the alcohol you drink, it's probably gonna mess up your gains more. All the sleep you don't have well, it's gonna mess up your gains more. The terrible food you eat, it's gonna mess up your gains a lot more.
Yeah.
The mentality that you have, the negative self-talk, it's gonna mess up your gains more. There's way more. You're not losing the battle, basically, is what I'm saying. Like, man, Jake, I've been training with you for a month, and you told me to do this cold exposure, and I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. You're not losing it on the cold exposure. That's not where you're losing the battle. I used to say this to people when I worked at a bar, drinking 8 nights a week. I was a professional booze hound, and was still in shape. I don't understand it, man. Like, what do you do? Da 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 da. Like, I do this, I do that, and well, I'm gonna have a Diet Coke, or I'm gonna do this. And I'm like, that's not where you're losing the fight. You know what I mean? Or like, hey Jake, is this healthy? They show me one plate of food. That plate does not matter. What? I was like, nothing on that one plate matters.
Change anything.
I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's the 1,000 before and the 1,000 after. So like, eat whatever you want on that one. It doesn't matter. But that plate is not where you're losing the fight. And I think it's the same thing with this. That's not where you're losing the battle. It's an ice bath right after you work out.
If you have a muscle building competition tomorrow, don't do an ice bath. If you want to look all pumped, don't do an ice bath. If you want to go back to training tomorrow, do an ice bath.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Right?
Now we're getting somewhere. Now these are tools, right?
Right.
If you have a bodybuilding show tomorrow, don't do an ice bath. That's kind of a statement. If you want to keep your pump on for the beach or something like that, don't do an ice bath. If you want to recover faster and go train tomorrow, irrespective of how you look, do an ice bath.
Yeah.
Now we're getting
right.
Now
So
I can write this down on my wrist and be like, okay, yes, do.
When do an ice bath?
Now we got some absolute.
Like you said, the 1,000 before and the 1,000 after. So let's say that you are training for a bodybuilding competition. So, and the reason why I keep bringing the bodybuilding competition is because hypertrophy is the conversation, But I'm like, okay, we can talk about other competitions and
no, that's good. That's my wheelhouse.
Right? So in hypertrophy, if you're training, usually you're training for a bodybuilding competition. Okay, we're there. So we do I would do ice bath regularly so that you can
Throughout the training.
So that you can optimize your recovery. You don't care what you look like up until the day of the show. Right? Also, the cold exposure is going to do another thing that as a bodybuilder, as a physique, or as a aesthetics bodybuilder you want, which is it's going to help you build brown fat, right?
So there's good fat and not good fat, white fat versus brown fat. Brown fat is the good stuff.
Brown fat is the one you want because it's the one that has it's brown because it has a high concentration of mitochondria. So mitochondria is the part of the cell that metabolizes food and oxygen, right? So if you have a lot of mitochondria there, you can metabolize a lot of food. And brown fat recruits energy from white fat. So as you do cold exposure, the number that they're throwing out there is that a 3-minute ice bath burns 600 calories. This is an average number, right? This is an average number. And it also stipulates that you warm your body up with no external help.
That's the key. That's the key, guys. Right? So all of you that go from the cold plunge at, the place I work out at, and then jump into the jacuzzi? No. And then go right into the steam room? No. Or go right into the sauna? No. And then you see me walking around shaking and twisting and moving and, dude, why don't you go in? That's why.
Right. But you're also learning to control your body temperature. Your body
naturally.
This is the thing for me. So in my coaching groups, the people that I work with, I ask them to do calisthenics, a movement calisthenics routine daily. And they're like, oh, but I already go to the gym. I don't give a fuck about you going to the gym. I don't give a crap about you going to the gym because the gym one day will be closed. The gym one day will be maybe too expensive.
Don't be dependent.
Or the gym, it's another stop that your brain can hang its hat from, being like, I don't want to drive to the gym. Oh, today is whatever, Martin Luther King Day, so it's closed. Not the, or it's the 4th of July and we're going to go to the gym and then blah, blah, blah. No, there's nothing like you push your body away from the floor and you pull your body up and you bend your body and you extend your body. And bro, if that's enough.
Proprioception.
It trains not only your proprioception, not only it makes your circulatory system work, but it also does something for your brain that says, I don't need anything external to take care of my body.
Self-reliance.
Right? I don't need 700 spices from 300 different countries to make a meal. I don't need a bunch of ingredients. I don't need a bunch of stuff, right? Because right now we're programmed to need a bunch of stuff. And to me, the gym is another one of the stuff.
And if that is taken away.
Oh man, it's like when COVID came, I was like, crap. The only thing that bothered me about the lockdown was that my school was closed. So my students couldn't train.
Right.
It's not that I needed them.
Same.
I never trained at my school. You know what I mean? Because it's not. It's self-reliance, which I know is what you talk about a lot with your groups. So
autonomy.
It's just don't need anything. Let them take everything away. That's the ultimate wealth.
Yeah.
When you can take everything away from me and I'm still rich, I don't care. I'm not. I'm gonna be happy no matter where or how I wake up tomorrow. If I wake up in hell, I'm gonna be like, well, man, at least it's not cold here. Cool, because I was cold last night. So it's about, and I love the conversation today because it was about not depending on other people to give you the answers. Like, this conversation is not about giving you the answer to should I do an ice bath or should I not be an ice bath. Which, by the way, we didn't even answer that. I mean, we answered that question in so many weird, contradicting ways. But more than anything, it's about being responsible for understanding the phenomenon that you're trying to fabricate.
That's a scientific method definition if I've ever seen it.
Right? So,
And I tell people, and that's what I do. More than anything, I say I'm a scientist. Why? Number one, because I love science as a student, always. But because to me, the definition of a great scientist is not someone who's trying to prove law or create dogma. The definition of a great scientist by nature and trade is someone who is constantly trying to disprove their hypothesis, right? It's, as you're testing it, you're not trying to prove it right. You're trying to constantly prove it wrong.
exactly. That's
the coolest thing about science, a la Thomas Edison. It wasn't about the one time he got the light bulb right. It was the 10,000 times that he failed.
Yeah.
So like you're on your way, Edison, with 7,000 plus already. Like
Right.
you've got a lot of data there.
But I'll tell you what, the Edison light bulb still works.
He's got 10,000 other ways to show you how it doesn't. Also,
yeah.
like,
right? And he will explain why it doesn't work,
Yeah.
why you should pick
Yeah.
this metal,
Yeah.
why tungsten and not
Yes.
it's copper.
Yes.
So it's
that's the knowledge. That's the work was in the failure.
right, but
the reps.
but the thing is, but that's the work. And we were talking about this before we started the recording. That we said it's not the formula, it's the work. Like, is the Jake's formula the only way to live that way? No, it's the work is what makes you live that way, right? Is my formula better than Jake's? No. It's just that you like Jake, train with Jake. You like me, train with me. You don't like any of us, train with someone. But just make sure that they're inspiring to you, that they're representing a model that you want to emulate. That when it would be very cool if you're interested in being responsible, being able to respond, right? That you understand the things that they're recommending that you do. The issue that we have nowadays with science is that it requires tremendous amounts of funding.
Yes.
And funding is usually controlled by corporations.
With
right?
different interests.
With an interest of you proving their commercial point, which is it just kind of jades the outcome of the experiment.
Now we're gonna get into my world of nutrition hard.
So for you, it's like you're like, I'm going Leon. I'm going like full on lion diet instead of just like human carnivore diet. And I was joking that he's gonna have to now go like hunt shit with his mouth.
I mean, like,
and his claws.
I'm pretty much.
You're almost there,
I'm
brother.
pretty much there.
Almost there. It reminds me of a Sunday in Argentina. Just missing a little. I love it when in Sundays in Argentina, it's pretty much this meal, but like a little lettuce and tomato salad that nobody touches. Who's making the salad? And there's like this piles of salad that get untouched, and there's no beef left. And we're eating intestines.
Why did I even make that?
We eat intestines. We chicholín, mollejas. So we eat the sweetbreads, the intestines,
I love
all the
organs.
We eat the whole cow. The tongue, man, tongue is awesome.
Same.
Lengua de escabeche. Oh, like escabeche, like pickled. Oh, so good. Anyways, we're getting on a thing. But anyways, I hope I did not answer your question.
You didn't perfectly.
Great.
Because to me now you're driving further curiosity and encouraging investigation from people, which to me is better than giving them an easy answer. Like go find out, go feel it, go test the hypothesis yourself, right? Like it's not avoiding the answer. It's the truth is there is no perfect answer. There is no absolute answer. We are all different. Everybody, one word, and everybody, two words, is different. And then to say like your exercise was more intense than mine or mine was less, what was the distance? Back to the scientific method. The most important element of a scientific method is control.
Yeah.
That answer is impossible to give because the control is all over the place.
Right.
You were at this place, you worked out this way, you were this height and weight, you're male, you're female.
Yeah.
It's impossible to say what's best for anyone at any given time like that for something, yes or no. But to say that there's benefit to it, yeah, of course. Here,
You
Alt
know,
tier?
to me, the ice bath has
I'm just
such
eating all
a
this fat.
go for it, man. Such a powerful. The ice bath has such a powerful effect on your mental stability and mental health that, to me, that's what matters.
Same.
You know, but you know, hypertrophy is a very specific phenomenon that is only relevant to a very specific group of people. So the question, it's.
So the ones of you that are out there like, it doesn't matter for my gains and like, I'm just gonna say, not really.
Not really, not for you. Yeah, sorry.
For like 99% of you.
No.
It doesn't really matter because this is back to professional athletes, right? Like the amount of collegiate athletes that make it to pros is less than 1%. So the amount of you that are tuned in watching this, asking about hypertrophy and its application to you and being hindered from cold exposure immediately following a training session, less than 1%.
Yeah.
So it's 99 plus.
It doesn't matter. You know what you should do is get off of Instagram and go do an ice bath, or put in another set of whatever workout you're trying to do to get more gains. Consuming this much social media content is hurting you more than doing an ice bath at any time.
Yeah.
I don't know there's a moment in particular when an ice bath would be hindering of anything. And you know what? I'm totally cool if you're in Miami and you're a hypertrophy person. Come and be the scientific control group. I'll let you in the ice bath for free. I'll train you, and we'll do the science, and we'll see if it affects you. Because I also have a theory because I haven't proven it, that just thinking about it too much is hurting you more than actually doing it. Right? Remember, if you're watching a horror movie, you get scared.
Insulin being secreted before highly palatable foods. The thought of highly palatable foods, the body will actually secrete insulin for. Even before meals, big meals.
They did a study where they numbed your tongue and they gave you sugary foods to see if you would get the same reaction even without testing the sugar. And you do. Like even thinking of ice cream. Really, our brains are so powerful at simulating reality. This is why you watching Jake and I eat a steak, your brain thinks you just ate a steak with Jake and I. You didn't. Go eat your own steak. It's a bummer. Wow. How big was that steak, by the way?
I think it was over 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds.
2.5 pounds,
So
and then the more matter.
With the bone, it was probably like 2 pounds. So we probably ate a pound a piece.
Pound a piece.
And then a couple of ounces of marrow from each one of the femurs.
That's about right. When you make a barbecue in Argentina, you say half a kilo per person.
Yeah, there you go.
So
that's right on the money.
You know, we're on it.
Now it's officially approved.
Yes,
but
even though to the weight.
That's the truth of it. Is I think that the ultimate thing that the ice bath, and cold exposure does, is that it requires presence. You cannot not be there. I don't care who you are. I don't care how tough you are, how experienced you are. Just like you said, when you go from room temperature to 30 degrees Fahrenheit, it's impossible for you not to be present, right? So like all the benefits, all the epinephrine, norepinephrine, the vagus nerve stimulation, autonomic, sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, all those things are great and they're awesome. Whether this happens or not with hypertrophy, who's to say? But the presence that's required, I think, to me, and same thing with the breath work, because you have to be so there to command that, to create that.
Yeah.
You can't be like, okay, I'm kind of here. All right, I'll do a little bit. It doesn't work.
Nope.
You have to be totally in there, and you got to believe it.
True.
Right? And then when you get into that water, there is nothing you can do to tell your brain, Dad, don't worry about it. And your brain's like, the fuck no. Like,
yeah, I don't care what you're
we're
thinking.
fucking here,
We're in. Yeah.
And that's, to me, I think it's something that is impossible to replicate elsewhere, and something that we're devoid of everywhere is presence. Because of our abilities to go there, distract, right? Like this is like, holy shit, I'm like hyper present now. Right? There's no phones, there's no mom, there's no girlfriend, like there's nothing. It's you, your thoughts, and your breath.
I always tell them that it's not you versus the ice. It's you and the ice versus your brain.
That's fair.
Because your brain's just trying to get out. And this presence, and this I like to call it mental presence. Right? The ability to tune your mental, your cerebral activity to what's actually happening right now. Not to what you think should be happening. Right? But what is happening right now? I wonder if you developing more presence, if that is going to help your hypertrophy training, right? Because if you're there doing pull downs and you're thinking you're connected with every muscle all the way back to the bottom of the insertion of the lat, that's different than if you're like cranking them out while listening to
100%.
Joe Rogan's podcast. You know what I mean? It's like this thing of doing so much and so many things and trying to optimize. You can't optimize anything if you can't measure anything because you're doing too many things. Like if you're trying to make a cake with 1,000 ingredients, you don't know which ingredient made the cake taste good. You know what I mean? You're like, which one is it?
This is what I say, and why using the carnivore diet or the lion diet is so great, because now you know if when you do this for a good period of time, if you start to get sick or something, or you eat something else after doing this for a period of time, you know exactly who the culprit was.
Yeah.
Because this is status quo.
Clean.
You're clean, right? Meaning like if I were to eat a blueberry and I got sick, like, well, I know what got me sick.
Right.
You know, it's not like, hey, I had this big salad with these 50 things in it. What could the culprit be? I don't know. The same thing with the 1,000 ingredient cake. I don't know.
I don't know. Right. And look, humans, we can eat anything. There's a guy, look it up. There's a guy that ate an airplane.
I saw
a whole
guy that
airplane.
ate a trash can or a grocery cart.
He started with a grocery cart and ended up at the end of his career ate a whole
I wonder if
airplane.
it's the same guy.
Same dude.
Oh, I definitely.
He
I saw the guy
ate a few grocery
carts. He's like a
carts.
homeless guy.
He ate a few. He ate a few bicycles, and then he moved up to airplanes and shit. He holds like a bunch of Guinness World Records, and he didn't die of a hole in the stomach. Like we're just badass animals, you know. Yeah, you can eat all this. You can, guys. It's like eating is important, but you know, breathing. Bro, oxygen. I can leave you without food for a month and you're fine.
Yes.
I mean, it'll be uncomfortable.
Yep.
And there'll be some damage.
But it's good.
But
it'll work.
Right? But if I leave you for 20 minutes with no oxygen, you're dead. So we're not even paying attention to how we're taking in oxygen. Right? Like if you're not doing breath work and you're thinking of ice baths, and this is why I want to tie it back and we started the conversation with that. Breath work. If you're concerned that the ice bath is going to just crush your gains, do breath work, because it's still anti-inflammatory. Like, the breath work will kill your pump, by the way, because it is so anti-inflammatory, because it releases so much norepinephrine, but you won't even realize it. But it'll help you rest and recover, which is really what your muscles need. Yeah. So it's right now because we're so short in attention, and because we want answers so fast, we're unfortunately losing the interest in the finer details of certain things. So we started with a conversation that ice bath after workout for hypertrophy, yes or no? And I was like, okay, what's an ice bath? What does it do? Hypertrophy, what does that do? After a workout, we didn't even talk about that. How long does after workout mean, right?
Same day, couple hours.
Couple hours, next day. I mean, so, you know, what about, and we didn't even talk about hydration, right? Which,
does that matter?
I'm sure it has something to do. Well, for me, it goes like this. Look, oxygen, 12 minutes. Without oxygen, most people will die. Water, 1 week. Without water, most people will die. Food, 1 month. Without food, most people will die. Yeah. So, which one matters the most?
Sleep's up there.
Yeah, sleep deprivation.
I said those are the 4 vitals, right? Food, water, air, and sleep. You mess with any of those, you can really start to fuck with somebody. Right.
Sleep and water. No, sleep and air. If I cover your mouth, it just goes quick.
It's gonna be fast.
So breath, then it looks like sleep, or probably water, sleep, and then food.
Yeah.
Then food.
Food's way down there.
It's important. Don't get me wrong. It's important. A lot of us draw our identity to our food. Think our food is the first place where we rebelled against our parents.
Of course.
Right? Because your parents are like, what do you eat?
No.
What do you eat now? Now, right?
Yeah.
Or when you were a teenager, the first thing you did with your money was go to McDonald's, get a burger. Yeah. Get your own treat that your parents wouldn't get you.
For sure.
So you did the first independent, your first autonomous decisions were usually to eat stuff that your parents wouldn't buy. Yeah. So we started defining. I remember I used to train, I used to do these MMA trainings, and I went to Spain, and we're like, okay, so we're gonna go to lunch, and after lunch, we're gonna fight. So we went to lunch, and people were like eating dessert and drinking wine, and I'm like, I was like, this is fucked up. And then the next day I was like, okay, we're gonna go to lunch, but nobody's gonna drink and nobody's gonna eat dessert. And they're like, what? They almost like ended the training, like firing, and they're like, no, this is Spain. So in Spain, you drink with your meal and you eat dessert, goddammit. And I'm like,
sounds like New Orleans.
But if you don't, what happens?
Right.
Do you get like your Spanish citizenship taken away? You stop being Spanish? Like, what the fuck happens, right? I was like, listen, and they're like,
in New Orleans and no, Jake, you don't want to drink? No, I'm good. What?
I also don't want to play live music or eat beignets. Like, where do we draw the line?
Dude, when I changed my area code, talk about the.
That's
there was
it.
a witch hunt out for me.
You're a Miami guy.
There was
man?
a witch hunt. And this is when I was living in New York.
Oh.
They're like, you fucking sell out. No, I was like, guys, it's just an area
Yankee
code.
now.
Yeah, it's just an area code.
So we gotta. I think that at the end of the day, I think that both you and I, even though we have very different methods, we agree on a lot of things. I think we disagree in very little. Mm-hmm. And we ultimately are mindset coaches. We use different methods to just poke at it to see if your mind becomes unshakable. And that we know creates an immense amount of self-sufficiency, which is ultimately, I mean, through our military martial arts training, you know that knowing how to take care of yourself in any situation creates a certain level of
esteem, confidence, and calm.
Yeah, which the confidence and the security and the calm that it creates is what allows you to then be able to really embrace a feeling of wellness, which I think that's what you're teaching people, right? This mindset that leads into the overall feeling of wellness, which is how we started the conversation with the Wim Hof method, right? I don't care how you get to it, but it's stress that's hurting your gains. But it's not only hurting your gains, it's also hurting your life, because the more stressed you are, the more of an asshole you are. And the more damaging your relationships are, and the more people have to be on their toes around you, the less kind you get to be. And ultimately, I know that inside of you, there isn't an asshole. There's just a beautiful, kind human being that loves the world and wants to be a great contributor to society. But because you're so stressed, you just sell yourself short. You promote yourself short. You display yourself dishonest. You know, for me, integrative living is about living the most fully expressed and honest life, where everything that we do is an honest expression of who I am. The way that I talk to you right now is a way that
I've always heard you talk.
You know what I mean?
I say that like, and coming back, getting out of the military, I thought the world was wrong. I thought everything around me was wrong, and it's because I was fucked up inside. Because the world is not as we perceive it. The world is as we are. So everything is a reflection to us, of us, complementary, right? And if you're right in here, your world will be right. And that's what I try to show people. That's what I try to help people see within themselves. It's not about teaching something as opposed to just uncovering and unlocking. Every human being, every body has the brilliance of a diamond inside them. We just have carbon over us, many of us, right? Because of time, stress, circumstance, commitments, obligation, whatever. And that carbon covers the diamond. And what I try to think I do and help people do is just to uncover some of this, and then they say, oh my God, I can see differently, I can feel differently. Jake, no, I didn't do anything. The food didn't do anything.
No.
It's all in there. That's where the real self-actualization is, the real autonomy is, the real self-mastery is, right? And like, whether it's breathing, whether it's through a cold exposure, heat exposure, exercise, meditation, reading, writing, exercise, whatever the outlet, the medium, it all matters. But at the end of the day, it's the individual, and it's your belief, right? Not thinking the external. Back to your thing about the gyms and everything being closed, and we can finish with this, saying that you got everything inside already, right? To think that you need or we need anything out there is the fatal mistake, right? Because it's exactly what we think we need is what keeps us and makes us weak.
Well said, brother.
Dude, thanks so much for sharing this meal with me today.
Thank you for having me.
And the knowledge. I'm ever the student and learned a fuck ton, again, as always, but I think it's a great conversation and one that needs to keep getting asked, and hopefully it just drives controversy and debate as it should, because it's something that should drive controversy and debate.
Yeah.
Thanks, dude.
Thank you for cooking, man.
Oh, man.